If you work in the NHS, sick pay is one of the most important and most misunderstood parts of your employment package. A lot of people assume sick pay just means you get paid X amount if you're off sick. But in reality, NHS sick pay is structured, tiered, and heavily rules-based. How much you're paid, how long you're paid for, and whether you're entitled to sick pay at all depends on your contract type, your length of service, and how much sick leave you've already used in the past. And this really matters, because when people get this wrong, the financial consequences can be serious. In this video, I'll explain the different types of sick pay available, how eligibility works, how short-term and long-term sickness are treated, exactly what you're paid and for how long, what happens when NHS sick pay runs out, and where the gaps are that catch people out. By the end, you'll know exactly what safety net you have and where the cliff edges are. With that being said, sit back, relax, and let's take a deeper dive into the data. Now, before we talk about NHS sick pay specifically, you need to understand that there are two different types of sick pay in the UK. Statutory sick pay, or SSP, is the legal minimum sick pay set by the government. It's currently £118.75 per week, and it's paid for up to 28 weeks. This is paid by your employer, not the government, and tax plus national insurance is deducted. To qualify for SSP, you must be classed as an employee, earn above the lower earnings limit, which is an average of at least £125 per week, and be off sick for at least 4 consecutive days, including non-working days. SSP does not cover the first 3 days. However, the lower earnings limit and 3 days rule is set to be removed in April of 2026. You do not qualify for SSP if you have received the maximum amount already or are getting statutory maternity pay. SSP on its own is extremely limited. For most people, the payments wouldn't come close to covering rent, mortgage payments, or basic household bills. For most staff, this is best thought of as a baseline, not the main benefit. If you're not eligible or your allowance ends, then you may be able to claim universal credit or employment support allowance, so it's always worth double checking. Occupational sick pay, often referred to as NHS sick pay, is contractual. That means that it's written into your NHS contract. It's paid by your employer, and it's far more generous than SSP alone. Most NHS staff are employed under Agenda for Change, where sick pay rules are set nationally in the NHS Terms and Conditions Handbook. A key point that often confuses people. While you're receiving NHS sick pay, SSP is included within it and not paid on top. This means you don't apply for SSP separately, and your total pay will never exceed your normal working pay. Your payslip, however, may sometimes still reference SSP. So occupational sick pay is an enhanced version of SSP. For staff under Agenda for Change, it applies equally to physical illness, mental health conditions, injuries, and recovery from surgeries. However, not everyone in the NHS is on Agenda for Change, so you should always check your specific contract as sick pay provisions can vary. For example, if you work as a doctor or dentist, or in a GP practice, or under a locally negotiated contract, never assume your sick pay matches Agenda for Change unless it's written into your contract. The key differences, in simple terms: statutory sick pay is low, flat rate, and time limited. Occupational sick pay is earnings-based, much longer, and far more protective. For most NHS staff, occupational sick pay is what actually keeps them financially stable during illness, but it's not unlimited. To qualify for this occupational sick pay, you must be directly employed by an NHS organisation, be on an NHS contract, not agency or bank only, follow your organisation's sickness reporting policy, and provide certification when required. You can usually self-certify for up to 7 calendar days. After day 7, you'll normally need a fit note from a valid healthcare professional. A crucial point is that this means continuous NHS service. In most cases, this can be carried across NHS employers, as long as there are no significant breaks. So, let's look at exactly what you're entitled to. Under the Agenda for Change, sick pay is based on length of service. In your first year, 1 month full pay, and then 2 months half pay. In your second year, 2 months full pay, and 2 months half pay. In your third year, 4 months full pay, followed by 4 months half pay. In your fourth and fifth years, 5 months full pay, and 5 months half pay. After 5 years or more, 6 months full pay and 6 months half pay. Also remember that sick pay entitlement is calculated on a rolling 12-month basis, and previous sickness episodes do matter. This is generous, but once you've used it, it's gone. This is where many people get caught out. And if your employment ends for any reason, sick pay entitlement stops on your last day of employment. NHS sick pay is calculated based on what you would have earned had you been at work. This usually includes basic salary, regular enhancements, recruitment and retention premia, unsocial hours payments, and high-cost area supplements. It's normally based on your average earnings over the previous 3 months, or another locally agreed reference period. It does not usually include overtime, bank shifts, and one-off bonuses. On screen now is an example of what sick pay would look like for an eligible employee with over 5 years of service. This may be useful for visualizing what is happening behind the scenes for enhanced NHS pay. Short-term sickness usually refers to single absences, minor illnesses, and short recovery periods. Even though these feel insignificant, they still use up your sick pay allowance. This is especially important if you have recurrent infections, stress-related absences, or repeated flare-ups of a condition. Over time, multiple short absences can quietly reduce future entitlement. Long-term sickness usually refers to weeks or months off work, ongoing health conditions, and serious illness or recovery. During long-term sickness, occupational health is usually involved. Adjustments or phased returns may be discussed, and sick pay moves from full pay to half pay to none. Once contractual sick pay ends, employers may extend half pay at their discretion, often if a return to work is expected, but this is not guaranteed and should never be relied upon. Sick pay is calculated by looking back over the previous 12 months. For example, if you're entitled to 4 months of full pay, 3 months off sick will use 3 months of that allowance. So a later absence within the same year may push you onto half pay much sooner. After returning to work, entitlement slowly rebuilds, but it doesn't reset overnight. This is one of the most misunderstood parts of NHS sick pay. It's also worth noting that annual leave continues to accrue while you're off sick, and if you're sick during booked annual leave, you can usually cancel it and take it later. However, if you're sick on a bank holiday, you're not entitled to a replacement day. Always check your local sickness policy, as this can vary. Once NHS sick pay is exhausted, you may fall back onto SSP, or you may receive no income at all. This is the financial cliff edge that catches many staff completely unprepared. At this stage, people may rely on savings, partner income, state benefits, or returning to work earlier than medically ideal. Even generous sick pay only lasts so long, so it can be worthwhile considering income protection for an added layer of security. This is not part of the NHS entitlement and needs to be considered separately. Income protection is essentially a safety net for your income if you're unable to work due to illness or injury. If something happens and you can't do your job, the policy usually pays you a regular monthly income until either you return to work, the policy ends, or you reach retirement age, depending on how it's set up. You choose how much of your income you want to protect and when it kicks in. You can have what's called a deferred period, which is the waiting time before payments start. This could be a few weeks or several months, and the longer you wait, the cheaper the policy usually is. Many people match this to their employer's sick pay. For example, if your workplace pays you 6 months, full pay, 6 months half pay, and then nothing, you may consider protection for half pay after 6 months, then full pay after 12. This way, you always stay on your full-time wage while off sick. Income protection isn't just for dramatic accidents. The most common claims are actually for mental health conditions, musculoskeletal problems, and long-term illness. And unlike short-term cover, a good income protection policy can pay out for years if needed. At its core, income protection is about protecting your lifestyle and financial stability, not just covering worst-case scenarios. Many staff assume they don't need it, until they do. I would highly recommend looking into this if you get time. Please comment if you would like to see a full video in the future about the best income protection schemes, including which one I use. NHS sick pay is generous, but finite. Understanding how it works puts you in a far stronger position, financially and emotionally. If you found this useful, subscribe for more plain English NHS finance content, and please check out some of my other 10-minute NHS finance explainers if you get time. Thanks for watching, and I wish you all the best for your future.